Welcome to Pain with a Purpose, the podcast where we dive deep into the stories of resilience, redemption, and purpose. I'm your host, Chris Woods, and each week we will sit down with guests who have faced challenges with substance abuse, mental health, and recovery. But we're not just dwelling on the past. Instead, we'll explore what keeps them driven towards a purposeful life. Join us as we navigate the journey from pain to a purpose. So with that, welcome back to Pain with a Purpose, Season 2, episode, I think this is number 6.
A lucky number.
Amy Delaney,
yes.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Thank you so much for coming out.
Yes, thank you for having me.
Shout out to, what's her name? Is it Jackie? Jackie Lewin.
Jackie Lewin, my best friend.
For connecting us.
Yeah.
Right? I actually don't even think that we even talked. I think she just was like, hey, this date, you're going to have this girl on. And I'm like, cool.
That sounds like Jackie.
Yeah. So if she vouches for you, I'm sure you've been through some shit and you've been able to recreate your life. Because she threw me a few curveballs when we were doing the episode. So I'm sure you have like a pretty cool story to tell. How did you land, before we get to like how you landed here, right? And PA for all things, because you're not from PA, right?
No, but I've lived in PA.
But you don't now.
No.
Wait, where'd you live in PA?
Chambersburg. That's where I almost died.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Just say that real subtle. Like real subtle. Okay. Well, before we get to Chambersburg, like what happened? Like what? You're sober, recovery, you're in.
I'm sober. Yeah. My sobriety date is 9/25/2016. So I just celebrated 8 years.
That's awesome.
Yeah. I still pinch myself every day.
Yeah. Do you still feel like you just got sober?
Yes.
Right? Like I'm coming up on, I only have 2 years more than you, but it still feels like I'm very much
That's a
still.
decade. That's a long time.
Which is insane.
It is, right?
But like I didn't, I never thought that like that was possible. You know what I mean?
Exactly. Yeah.
But you went to treatment like once or a bunch of times or what?
So I went to treatment, I guess you could say twice,
Mm-hmm.
but people always say she went to treatment once. I went to a rehab, a 28-day stay to appease the courts. I was mandated in the Poconos. And then I got out because I had reservations and I went back to doing what I do best. And that's when I was drinking Listerine. I don't want to get there yet.
Yeah. Wow. You're just going to drop the bomb on us like that. Okay.
Well, so then I went to
what flavor did you have a favorite flavor?
I did. It was the dark yellow kind, the kind that really looks like
the kind that nobody buys.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. The kind that when you open it up, it smells like Band-Aids. It looked the most like, like scotch or whiskey to me. So I felt like I was really drinking the real thing.
Don't they? And I just have to go with like what they say because I've never actually drank Listerine.
You're not missing out.
Well, I mean, obviously you did it for a reason. Like there was effect produced by it. But like, can you lose your sight? Or is that a thing? Did I make that up?
No, you probably didn't. I didn't know that, but I did. I was diagnosed with cirrhosis of the liver, and I'm sure that didn't help.
Yeah.
But it has 26% alcohol content.
Jesus, we might even have to like edit that out. God forbid somebody is listening and they're like,
no, seriously.
I'm going. No, but I get it. Like we go to the depths.
I don't share that. Mm-hmm. That's a very good point because I don't share that when I speak at rehab sometimes for that reason.
Yeah.
Because
that makes sense. Because I always was like, people would drink hand sanitizer and they're like,
and vanilla extract, almond extract, anything. It got to that point. Yeah.
So you're like strictly alcohol or?
No. Dumpster head.
Okay.
Yeah.
So anything to get you outside of yourself, essentially.
Exactly.
Okay. So you went to a 28-day rehab at some point.
Yeah.
And then didn't stay sober, I assume.
Nope.
Okay. Because we're only in like the first 4 minutes of this thing. So
yeah.
You already jumped right into it.
Yeah.
So walk me through like the next couple of years. Like what did that look like? Or did you get sober shortly thereafter?
Shortly thereafter. So I got out and I did that to appease the courts. And for like another year, I was running, and I was drinking Listerine to not make my father think I was crazy. Because
I'm sure he wouldn't think that. Yeah.
because I just kept beating myself up by drinking. So I didn't want him to know what I was doing. Right.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So I was stealing Listerine, and I thought I was being sneaky with it. But he noticed that his mouthwash was missing, because that's how I got the idea.
Mm-hmm.
I drank his mouthwash first because I'd seen it in the movies. See, get ideas.
Mm-hmm.
And then I felt the effects, and so I started stealing it. But that lasted for like another year, and then he caught on to me. He saw me. So he called it the dad hab, and I had to live with him at the end. This is at the very end of my story, but I was living with him at the dad hab, and I was under his surveillance 24/7 at this point. And he'd drive me to work, or drive me to his work every day. I had to be right by his side. And every day we'd drive an hour to his office, and I'd always be like, I need to stop at, whether it be like Acme or Walmart, any store that I knew that carried Listerine.
Mm-hmm.
I would run in.
Does it work? Does it work? I mean, if it's double the alcohol, I mean, essentially you could just get like the little travel ones.
Well, yeah. If we were stopped at a 7-Eleven, I would get the travel ones.
Okay. Yeah.
But if we went, my goal was to get to hit a big department store.
Okay.
And I would steal it, and I would beeline it to the bathroom and drink as much as I could and get back in the car. And he caught on to, why are you always stopping places?
Mm-hmm.
Like, where are you going? So one day, like 6 months in, he saw me run from one side of the store to the other, and he followed me into the store.
Mm-hmm.
And I hear boom, boom, boom on the bathroom door. Open the door, in comes Dad, and he's like, what are you doing? And he looked through the trash, and he found the bottle of Listerine, half gone.
Wow.
And he's like, Amy, I can't watch you kill yourself anymore. And he made me call detox that day.
I mean, it's just like so nuts, like, because I'm sure that, like, it wasn't like, although it was your drink of choice because you were getting away with it for a good bit.
What, Listerine or alcohol?
Listerine.
Yeah, I guess so.
But like, it's crazy the depths that we'll go to just like figure out how we're going to actually do this successfully, or like at least not get caught.
Yep.
Or at least, I mean, you can plug anybody's experience in, but for me, it was like before Kratom was a thing, before like the synthetic weed that we now know it as, like, what, CBD or whatever it was, like we had Spice. So I remember like the corner store always had my Scooby snacks. That's what it was called. That's like what was on the package. And it smelled horrible. Like it was a very distinct smell. And I was probably like out of my third or fourth treatment center. The hero that I am, living with my mom. Mm-hmm. Burn holes all over the mattress, right? But like I'm not doing opiates, so like it's okay.
Right.
And I was smoking full blunts of this stuff, like by myself in my room. Door locked.
See, now doesn't that stuff make you go blind?
I was absolutely out of my mind. I was like in a manic state. I was like stuck. Like none of this stuff should have ever been sold. Like it was like,
I heard that. I didn't get into that. Thank goodness.
And like my mom would be like, "What are you doing?" And I would literally show her the package that I got. Right. Because like sometimes she would walk in and I'd be smoking a blunt and it looks like weed. Right. But it's not. Yep. And I would like try to convince her, like, "Mom, like I swear it's not weed. Like it's fine. It's like, I bought it at the corner store. It's got to be okay."
Spice.
I don't even get high. Just relax. Like I am literally out of my mind, higher than I ever had been. And like thinking that I'm okay to an extent when I'm not. Like I'm literally just replacing one thing for the next, hiding this from myself that really it's called a relapse. You know what I mean? Like I was literally on a relapse, but I was like, "No, Ma, I swear it's okay." And I was really doing that because of work, and I was I was tired of getting drug tested, but regardless, like the stuff that we'll do.
Spice?
I don't think they could back then.
Right.
It was like, like even like when Kratom became a thing, I think it like took a little bit for us to test for Kratom.
For Kratom. Yeah. I know.
But yeah, so
the lengths that we go to. It's
wild.
And
that was like the one that I was open with my mom about, right? Like forget like the lengths that I would go to when I was really ripping and running, right? Like, and like normal people would never understand it, right? And I don't know if you've done stuff like this or people that you know that have done stuff like this, but like, I'm not exaggerating when I say like I used to like army crawl on my mom's bedroom floor when she was sleeping.
Oh my God.
You know what I mean?
I used to think I was the best at that.
I was like silent. You know what I mean? And
I was addicted to that feeling more than the drugs, I think, at some points. Like the whole rush of it.
To think back that I actually did that, right? And I know my mom watches like every like episode that I put out, right? So like I know that I've done a ton of damage. Like we'll get into all that, but to the point where like she finally moved the bag to like her bed, like next to her pillow, like still wouldn't stop me. You know what I mean? Now I'm like creeping on the memory foam, like up on like imagine if she opened her, I'd be like, I don't even know how I got here. And like, I'm like, that's like the sick stuff we do. We laugh about it now, but like, you're going to tell me that was a choice? You know what I mean? Like the normal people out there are like, well, if Amy wanted to stop doing what she was doing, she like, really? It was a choice? You know?
Yeah. No, I didn't have a choice.
No. So anyway, enough about me going on my, army crawling. All right. So Dad sent you right to detox.
Dad sent me, well, he made me call and we got in touch with Bergen Regional. Okay. And I'm from Mercer County, which is, it's Lawrence Township, where Jackie's from. We actually went to high school together.
So I separated by like, who would you guys cheer for football wise? If we were like Jets or Giants?
Both.
Okay.
Both. We had a lot of Jets fans and a lot of Giants fans.
Yankees or Mets?
Oh, both. Phillies. Yeah, we'd go Phillies too. Because
I'm just trying to differentiate where like the township is.
That's a great question. Yeah, because we're like, so Lawrence is right in between Princeton and Trenton. And Philly is like 40 minutes from us. So we had a lot of Phillies fans. Like I'm an Eagles fan. Yeah. Football, Good.
You're probably a better person for it.
My husband doesn't think so, but he's a Giants fan. But it's a nice,
he was raised
nice
wrong.
house.
That's a shame. Maybe one day I'll meet him. I don't know. I'll tell him too.
I got to give him a big shout out on this podcast too. But yeah, so I lived. Where was I going with this again?
We were just talking about like where
how
Lawrence
I got into detox. Okay, so Bergen Regional was 2 hours from Mercer County, and I had to call and schedule, to see if they had a bed, and they said yes. And my dad drove me 2 hours. He got me nice and drunk on the way because I wasn't going either, any other way. And I remember my last alcoholic beverage. It was the coconut bai water.
Okay.
With a pint of 100 proof Smirnoff that I made him buy me.
Wow.
That was my last alcoholic beverage. And we pulled up to Bergen Regional, and I always share this in my story because I looked at it and I was like, there's no way I'm staying here. It looked like something out of an Alfred Hitchcock movie, like 1960s horror film.
Yeah.
And I was in this little hot, swampy detox this place is gorgeous. Or,
we're going to have to edit that out.
Okay. Whoops.
No idea where we are. Studio's offsite.
I've seen some really nice detoxes. Yeah. This one was not a nice place.
I heard RCA is really nice.
I heard RCA is really nice.
I'm just kidding. Now I'm getting out of pocket. We'll edit all of it. I'm just kidding.
Oh man. All right. So
it's all right. They can't even tell that I got fake teeth in. It's all right.
It's not live. Okay. So where are we going with this? So detox. So shouldn't we go like before all this?
We'll get there.
Okay.
My podcast, dude.
Okay.
No, we'll get there. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I get to Bergen Regional and they have me on Librium for 5 days. I had no clue where I was. I wouldn't have agreed to it, like I said, if I wasn't drunk on my way there. And it was the first time my father ever said no to me throughout all this. He had been putting up with me for years now of trying to get me help. And I just didn't see it. I didn't think I needed help. I thought I had it all under control. I'm like I'm going to stop all this nonsense when I'm going to stop it. I didn't think I had a problem. And after I woke up from the 5 days of being sedated pretty much with Librium, they said, there's a rehab here, a 28-day program on site in Bergen Regional called F1. And a voice inside me for the first time was like, do it. Like you have nothing, you have exhausted all your options. Like your father dropped your bag and said, you're not coming back to the dad hab.
So he did put that boundary down.
Yes, he did.
Okay.
For the very first time.
Yeah.
You know? And I always, I had to do the work. Like, were my parents enablers? Yes and no. Yes and no.
I really struggle with that.
I struggle with it too, because my father's support, I don't know where I would be if I didn't have it. And I get emotional thinking about that, because that man, I mean, he has put up with so much. And I really, I thank him for where I am today.
I mean, so my truth is like, I stopped trying to figure it out. Right. I don't know if my mom or my grandfather enabled me. Right. Like, could I sell salt to a slug at that time? Sure. Of course I could. Did they give me money when I didn't need it? Absolutely.
Right.
Is it enabling? Is it unconditional love? Like, who am I to really say? Right. But I do believe that everything happens for a reason. So I don't know how it would have played out otherwise. I have no idea. I mean, like, I know that, like, if I have a friend that's struggling and what I say to their family, but at the end of the day, like, what they did for me ultimately saved my life. So it's tough. I have no idea.
Amen. I know. I'm grateful. I'm grateful for the way it played out.
Yeah.
I can say that.
So you've referenced that a number of times, right? Like, how was, like, your upbringing? So you grew up in Lawrence Township?
No.
Where'd you grow up?
Well, I did. Okay. So
Chambersburg.
No. So I did grow up in Lawrence. I was born in Hollywood, Florida. And then,
Okay.
Yeah, I'm an only child. My parents met down there, and I was born in Hollywood, Florida. They moved up so dad could start a cable business. We moved to Hamilton Township.
Okay.
And so I lived in Hamilton. And that's where mom and dad got divorced at 3. AA was my first resentment at a very early age.
Okay.
Because mom was 2 years in the program at this time. She was sober when she had me. And my father, he had his own insecurities going on. And he didn't understand, what drugs and alcohol, like an addict was. His idea of an alcoholic was someone outside of a liquor store with a paper bag, and mom, her family was riddled. Like, the lineage in her family, the alcoholics just go, like her sister, committed suicide over drugs and alcohol. My grandmother, 2 years after that, in 86, killed herself. And then her brother aspirated on his own vomit from alcoholism. So, like, her family was, riddled. My father married mom, and she got sober when she had me in 84. And in 86, when we were up in Hamilton, dad just couldn't handle mom going to meetings all the time. And every time he would pick her up from the meetings, he'd see her hugging people, and he got insecure.
Yeah.
And I thought at a young age, that's why mom and dad split up, was because of AA.
Yeah.
So it put a bad taste in my mouth for years of the program. Isn't that funny? And the very thing that saved my life and gave me my life back is my first resentment. I always think that's hilarious.
I mean, people do say life comes full circle.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
So did dad, like, ever try to do, like, Al-Anon or anything like that? Dad
did do Al-Anon, and he met Lois. Lois
really?
Wilson. Yes, he did.
No shit.
On her deathbed. He did Al-Anon, and he did a man's retreat.
Okay.
And they went up to New York.
Wow, that's actually a really interesting. I did not think that was going to come out of your mouth next. That, like, you
right? Yeah. Well, I'm full of surprises.
That's actually pretty cool.
That's really cool.
The reason I asked was, like, if you were going to say no, he didn't, it would make sense of, like, why
he wasn't supportive.
Yeah.
I know. Like I said, I mean, looking at it now and being older and knowing dad had some issues himself.
Yeah.
He wasn't an alcoholic addict, but we've all got issues.
Yeah.
He was insecure. His mom, my grandmother, cheated on his father. So
yeah,
that's why they broke up. So I think it stained his heart a little bit.
So when mom and dad split,
what
did that look like?
So interesting. It seemed like they didn't split. for the next like 18 years of my life. Until I was 19, they were still sleeping together. And Dad, I love you. If you ever see this podcast, I'm just being completely honest. He knows, he's heard me tell my story, but yeah. So until I was 19, my dad and my mom had relations, which used to really confuse me. My father ended up marrying my stepmother when I was 6. So I would see him on the weekends. Mom had sole custody of me. And but Dad was the biggest supporter. He paid all of our bills. Mm-hmm. You know, we lived in apartments all over Lawrence Township, and he paid for all of the rent, all the bills, paid for child support until he had to. And they just seemed like they were always going to get back together. That's what I thought. So I just kind of like had that little like hope. But Mom was an unmedicated bipolar. So I grew up around mental health, and yeah, it was like walking on eggshells a lot.
Yeah.
A lot of the time we'd be at, do you remember Radio Shack?
Of course I do.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Dating myself here, but do they still exist? I don't know.
No, they went away from
okay.
it. But
so,
I mean, listen, you're not that old. Like, I remember them.
That's true.
You know?
That's true.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So I remember like it was yesterday being in Radio Shack and Mom looking at the cashier and saying, I don't want to curse, but who the F sent you here? And I'm 7 years old going like tugging on her, coattails. Like, Mom, what are you talking about? Like, you're crazy. Stop. You can't do that. And she tried to explain to me that my father was the director. Have you ever seen that movie, The Truman Show?
Yeah.
With Jim Carrey?
Mm-hmm.
Mom really thought her life was The Truman Show and my father was the director.
Oh, wow.
That was like her mania. So it was like she was paranoid. It almost seemed sometimes she was like borderline schizophrenic, but she wasn't.
Yeah.
She didn't hear voices, I don't think. Mm-hmm. But she did like outlandish things, so, like, when she would have these episodes.
Yeah.
I'll even go into, I was 11 years old. It was a school night, and she was so upset that my father was with my stepmother, and she dressed me all in black, and she said, "We're going for a ride." And we drove up to his house in the middle of the night, and we spray painted his house.
Damn, you did too?
Yeah, I was in on it. I mean, I don't really remember. I remember standing next to her.
Yeah.
I don't know if I really partaked. I think I was trying to, be the lookout at a young age. Like you're crazy. We got to go.
Yeah.
But thinking again, like how this is just normal, that she was just a passionate person, I guess.
Yeah.
Mom was really cool. I mean, you can ask all my friends. She was like the cool mom,
Yeah.
She raised me. Like during the holidays, we had a butsudan, which is like a Buddhist scroll, gohanzen, a menorah, and a Christmas tree.
Okay.
All for the holidays.
Yeah.
So like, I was a little confused, I guess.
I mean, listen, life coming full circle. Choose your own conception of God.
Exactly. You know what I mean? Yes, I got to.
Yeah, but now you got me all in my head because I just like for mischief night, I took my kids out.
Oh man, did you dress some in black? Wait, you took your kids out for mischief night?
Yeah.
Let's go back to that.
But I kept them in the car.
Is this good parenting?
I think it was phenomenal parenting. I even waved at a cop, like, as I was wrapping my boy and his wife's car in toilet paper.
Oh man.
But I think they knew, like, this is not like a kid. You know what I mean? I smiled at him, laughed. I was like, "Yo, what's up, brother? It's just the Kennedy's house. Don't worry about it." But hopefully, hopefully they thought it was funny. My daughter Grace actually did start crying before we left. She was like, "I don't want us to get arrested." I'm like, "I'm not going to put you in harm's way like that. I think this is going to be hilarious."
Did you traumatize your daughter?
I hope not. But I'm sure if anybody listens to it and like leaves a comment, they'll probably be like, "You're a horrible person." And if that's the case, so be it. I think I'm a cool dad. So
yeah, I think
I didn't spray paint their car. You know what I mean?
I know.
But like I did rock out with some toilet paper.
Listen, mischief night was really cool. You gotta.
Have you noticed? I don't know, like where you Sparta, like in that area. Where do you live?
I live in Sparta now. Yeah, well, like Newton area. Yeah.
Does anybody still go out?
No, my husband and I were talking about that. He grew up in a town right next to Sparta, and when he was younger, he said like they used to trash the place, and now it's like
nobody's
desolate,
out.
so quiet. He's like, what are kids doing these days?
Call of Duty Black Ops 6.
I was going to say they're inside playing video games. What
Well,
a
that's the
shame.
thing. So my wife was actually like, he lives in like a row home, not a row home, but like a townhouse.
Yeah.
And she went all the way up to his like window, like his front window, looked inside, was videotaping it. He was dropped in with the boys. He had no clue. I was just wrapping his car in toilet paper. That was the best part of the video.
That's
but whatever.
awesome.
That was the ADD kicking on.
Yeah.
So you spray painted Dad's house.
Yep. At age 11. And and then we drove an hour back home. But it was little things like that you know, just kind of made me feel different of my friends' groups. I was in Girl Scouts till I was like 18.
Okay.
Not selling cookies. I did the cookie
You were trapping
thing.
cookies, dude. You probably had put up record numbers.
Not in high school. I got too embarrassed to go door to door. But when I was up until like middle school, I did do the door to door, but I stayed in it because I heard it was good for college application. And also for the camping. I love to camp.
Okay.
Funny thing is that I ended up not wanting to go to college, didn't care, but I'll get to that. But I can't remember what I was talking about with that.
Well, that was going to be my question anyway. It was like, how did you do on like going into college? Because you were like, I heard it was good for school.
Oh, okay.
You know?
So yeah. So I was known as like the theater girl in school.
Okay.
So yeah, you can ask. I was gonna say you can ask Jackie, but I was always like the lead in all the school plays since like an early age.
Yeah.
And then when I got to high school, that all changed. And I always say this when I'm speaking. I didn't go to high school. I went to school high. I started smoking weed, and I accrued 89 absences my junior year, and they had to have a sit down with me. And
how many days of school is there?
Like 120, I think.
Wow.
Or maybe more now. I don't know.
I have no idea, but that's like,
it was astronomical numbers.
No one's broke that record.
Right. Yeah, it was pretty bad. And they were like, well, you have to go to summer school or you're not going to graduate. So I went to summer school, and something kind of shifted gears in my head where I was like, I'm going to just kind of do this last year of high school, And I went to vocational school. So half day I was doing my academics, and then the other half I was doing performing arts at a community college.
Yeah.
Which I got straight A's in. And it's what I loved. I loved to sing, dance, and act because I got to be a different character on stage. That girl that felt, that's where I was going with this. That angst feeling that I got being around mom, or like those manic episodes, or feeling a little different. It all dissipated when I, took my first drink at 12, when I smoked all those, joints, accruing all those 89 absences. And being on stage felt like that too. Yeah. I got to wear a different mask. And so I loved it. And I graduated high school. I got into a really good performing arts school down in Miami.
Okay.
Called New World School of the Arts.
Oh shit.
Yeah, down in right in downtown.
And you went?
I went for one semester. I went for 2 semesters, but I only really finished one because I accrued too many absences my second semester. So I ended up dropping out.
Yeah.
Because I was introduced to the white lady down there. I was in Miami. So
that'll get you.
That'll get me. So I was, and once I did that, I was like, I don't need to go to school to be an actress. Like, this is it. I've found my role. I felt like the ultimate movie star on that, I felt enlightened more than I ever had. And that I found all my answers, right? So yeah, I mean, by high school I was, alcoholic, loved to smoke, and then I get to college, and now I'm loving, cocaine, loving it. Drop out of college, and I took someone hostage with me. I can't say that when I talk in high schools because I talk at high schools sometimes. Yeah, and they're always like, what? You took someone hostage?
They don't understand it.
They don't understand it, but you get it, right? Like, I had a very good friend of mine who's my best friend, who actually did my flowers for my wedding. I'm really so
Love
close
that.
with
Okay.
all of my friends in college.
Okay.
And they went on to be on Broadway. I actually just went and saw my friend on Broadway last week. They're all doing amazing things.
Yeah.
I dropped out. And the one friend, I took him up to Brooklyn with me. And we were like, we'll just, do this whole Broadway thing on our own. And we, just made fake IDs and partied in New York City. That's all we did. But I always like to share this part of my story because this is when I realized that I truly had a problem with alcohol. When I was in New York, I mentioned my father being married to my stepmother, seeing my mom, and he had stopped seeing my mom, but now he had this friend who was this woman from India. She owned a little market around from his office. And I would go and visit her, and she was like, she used to call me Betu, which means child in Hindi. Betu, if I get you a passport, you come to India with me. And I'm like, okay, I'm 19. So I go to India with her and her family. I'm in their wedding. I'm there for 3 weeks. But when I get there, we land in Gujarat, and I find out it's an alcohol-free state. And I'll never forget the way when I took in that information, I was like, whoa, what am I going to do? At this point, I'm used to drinking every day, and I didn't know what I was going to do. But every good alcoholic addict, what's the word I'm looking for? Where we're just like
Listerine.
No. No, that comes later. Innovative.
I had to take my shot. That was
good. That was good.
Yeah. I mean, listen, you could put us anywhere. We're going to figure it out.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly. Put me in India. I'm figuring it out. Well, I did. I had a loophole because I had a passport, and someone said, follow me. And they took me down this mud tunnel with these Indian men with rifles in front of me. And they brought me to this little room, and it had all this alcohol. It was like Prohibition days. That's what it felt like. And it was like, choose whatever you can carry. And I took it back to where I was staying. And I remember bringing that back and seeing everybody with all these smiles. And I felt like Santa Claus. And I was like, this is it.
Oh, so the family appreciated it.
Oh my God. Yeah, because it's illegal. But since I was from a different country,
you legally could have it, but you still couldn't
I don't think
buy
I
it.
could. I mean, maybe. I don't really know. I didn't look too into it, actually. Maybe they were like, if anybody gets in trouble, it'll be her.
Yeah.
Maybe I really would have been screwed.
It's crazy.
Actually, now that I think about it.
Early on, right? You're like, where's the red flags, right? Maybe it's like being in India, following men with rifles.
Right.
Just for a couple 5-gallon things of vodka. You know what I mean?
No, but I'm just following it like it's
the
pathway
really just doing
to
whatever
light.
we got to do. Yeah.
Pathway to salvation. Are
so
you kidding?
you were their savior that day.
I was their savior. Do you remember that movie Blow with Johnny Depp?
Yeah.
Yeah, that movie was really popular then. And that's who I felt like.
Yeah, I'm sure
and
you
that's
did.
who I wanted to be for the rest of my 20s. That's what I thought I was. And I never watched the end of that movie because it always ended with him going to prison. And I was like, well, I'm not going to be that stupid. I ended up being that stupid.
Yeah. So, touch on that. So, what ended up happening there?
So,
I assume it wasn't the alcohol in India.
No. And so I did go to prison, but I did, I accrued 3 felony charges in my day. So when after I got back from India, I took that feeling with me, and I did this whole geographical change or cure, and I went back to Florida, and then from Florida, I drove to Bonnaroo, the music festival in Tennessee. Never heard.
No.
I was like this hippie chick for a little bit, living on a mountain with a mountain man that I met after doing shrooms for the weekend. I was supposed to leave, right after the festival. And
You just stayed.
I just stayed. The girl who I drove with, she was like, Amy, I'm leaving. I'm like, well, see you later.
That's great.
And I ended up staying there for a year, breeding pit bulls. That's probably why I have pit bull now. But anyway, I just kind of bounced around the country, and I moved all over, and I ended up in the Keys at a couple times, like off and on for 6 years. But the first time I was down there, no, not the first time I was down there. It was the second time. But the first time I was down there, I met somebody from Boston, and then I moved up to Boston. See, there's a pattern to my story here. Mm-hmm. My first addiction was codependency, like relationships.
Yeah.
So I'm always moving around with someone else or for someone else, because I'm constantly, whether it be a drug or another person, running from who I really am, because I didn't know who I was, right? I thought I was Johnny Depp. No. So I was living in Boston, and up in Boston is where I got introduced to my first opiate. Oxy 80s were really big back then. And I got prescribed at age 24 Oxy 60s.
Wow.
And talk about, I mean, I think about that now. And when I bring the message into high schools, a doctor giving a 24-year-old 60 milligrams of those that aren't even allowed to be prescribed anymore, you know, that's what really sent me down my road fast. That ended quickly there, you know, ran myself into the ground there, but I ended up back in the Keys, and I found out that's when all the pill mills were huge. So I was living in Key West. I was dating the kingpin of the island. They used to call him Primo. And we would drive every month to Broward County. And it was like pain clinics. There was more pain clinics than McDonald's at this point. And I mean, you see all these documentaries. That was my life, man. I don't know if you've seen Painkiller on Netflix or anything. That was what I lived. I would go into these pain clinics with a fake MRI, and man, I had the worst back that ever existed, right? And I would just collect all these scripts and pills, and then I'd take it down. That feeling that I got, like in India, I'd bring that, you know, all the pills back to the island, and I was like the supplier. And I got roped up down there. That's what happened.
In Key West?
In Key West. That's where I accrued my felonies. I was arrested 5 times in 1 year.
Really?
Yeah. My picture was everywhere down there. It was
really.
Yeah, the cops were watching us for a while. They had those little like cameras, those little tripod cameras, like they were surveillancing buildings.
Like something like that?
Yeah, like a camera.
Like a tripod.
Like a tripod.
Yeah.
But you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Like where they're like surveying buildings.
Yep.
They were really watching us.
The whole time.
And the guy I was with got in more trouble, and he did go to prison, but I did some time in county down there, and I learned
there's no jail in Key West, is there?
Yes, there is.
There's a county jail in Key West?
Oh, yes, there is.
Is it still paradise?
It's called Monroe County Jail.
Is it still paradise?
It's not, man. It's weird. It's like on a farm.
Really?
Like my room, there was peacocks out my window. Like every morning. Yeah, so weird. Peacocks.
I can only imagine.
It was wild.
Like the moment of clarity that you probably had often. We were like, what is my life?
Yes. And you know what happened while I was down
there?
there?
Like you're talking to these peacocks.
Talking to the peacocks.
I just know how nuts I would get.
Wait until you realize at the end of this how that comes full circle. I didn't even realize the peacock. Keep that in mind. Because I'm going to tell you something funny. While I was there, my mom at this point she kind of followed me. I didn't like get into that, but she kind of followed me around like wherever I went.
Okay.
Somehow she would end up there with me. And she had friends in the Keys too, so she was living down there. And at this point, my mom was in the rooms like for 15 years until she started to stop like going. But she had 28 years of sobriety before she relapsed. But anyway, when I was down in the Keys, she was going to some meetings down there for years, and they had like the AA and NA literature in there. And I like picked up a book, and I'm opening the Just for Today, and I'm reading it. It was my mom's book. It was signed by Jackie Bennett.
Oh my God.
And I almost thought it was my first like, okay, all right. Like something's trying to come through and talk to me.
Yeah.
You know? So yeah, so I did some time down there, and I got out, and the cops down there were basically like, you know, the judge was basically telling me, I think you'd be better off leaving the island, because I kept having court dates, and he could tell that I was just getting myself wrapped up into the wrong scene.
Yeah.
And like you said, all these red flags, they just kept popping up.
But when we're in the thick of it, like we can't, it doesn't matter. Like I have to be stopped essentially, Like,
I was a mad woman.
If I could have like stopped on my own, I would have stopped years before I got sober. Yeah, I mean, listen, it's really, and to imagine like trying to figure out you have a problem in paradise. Like having like a little.
I thought I had it made. I thought I made it.
The bars don't really close there. Like you could have been at
bars
Sloppy
don't
Joe's,
close, Sloppy Joe's, Rick's.
Mm-hmm.
Oh man, Rick's was my spot.
I had a different experience. I've only been to Key West once.
Okay.
Although it was probably 3 years ago that I went.
Oh, I haven't been back.
But my mom went to Key West one time previously, and she like for the next 20 years just only talked about Key West.
Yeah,
like, it's the best place in the world. Yep. One day I'm going to retire there.
Yep.
Whatever, like I could live on a beach there somewhere. So I was like, it got to a point in not only my life but my sobriety where I was like, I'm going to take my mom to Key West, like just her and I.
Yeah.
Right. So we did. Wasn't doing that well where we could like stay. What is it? The Opal. Like wherever it is, like right on the water, like at the end of the island. But like
Opal
we stayed at Margaritaville.
Yeah.
And it was great. It was a great time. She tied one on the entire time, right? Lived their best life.
Good for her.
I stayed sober the whole time, but like,
good for you.
yeah, it was great. Like we put her on the beach and like it's real rocky, right? Like she fell on the beach, like within like 3 feet of water and she thought she was drowning. I'm like, Mom, we got to get you out of the house a lot more. Stand up. You're okay. But yeah, I mean like, not to jump ahead seriously, but like, without recovery, I have none of that.
Yeah.
So what was like some of the coolest times of my sobriety was like the darkest times.
I haven't been back since.
Really?
No, I don't know if I don't have any desire to go back.
Do you think?
Not yet.
Well, they might also still remember you there. Like, yeah, no.
You know what's funny? Yeah.
You don't come past Marathon, okay? That's what they might say.
7 Mile Bridge?
Yeah.
Nope, no entry.
Yeah.
No, I do want to take my husband there sometimes. So I do talk about how beautiful it was and there was good memories there, but I would like to live it sober like the way you did because it is beautiful.
Yeah.
It's gorgeous. But yeah, just too many dark times.
Yeah.
So my father actually, the way I got out of Key West was I guess in one of my drunken stupors, this is like getting towards, the nitty gritty of me being down there. I called him, I guess, one night in a blackout. And the next thing you know, I'm being looked for. My dad, I guess, flew down from New Jersey, rented a car, and his story, he says he drove around and he paid people $50 to get in the car and help me find Amy Coughlin.
Wow.
And they did. They found me. And
not to cut you off, but I don't think he enabled you. I think it's like unconditional. That's unconditional love.
Thank you for saying that. Yeah.
Enabling would have been like, hey, I'm preloading your card with 2,000 and like, can you please come back up here? We'll get you help. Right. And like, you just never doing that. He was like, okay, next thing you know, he's down there. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Like yeah. He like took off work and was like, nope, got to go get my daughter. Yeah. Well, how that went down is he tried to, there's a place called Depew. It's in Key West. That's their detox.
There's a detox down there. Okay.
Yeah, called Depew.
Had no idea.
Yep.
What a name.
What a name.
Yeah.
I actually remember visiting my mom there too later in life. But I went in and I AMA'd. It was just not for me yet. But I drove back up with Dad, and the pills aren't that accessible anymore. So now I'm living at the Dad Hab. I told you about the Dad Hab. This is the first time at the Dad Hab, and I was introduced to heroin, and then that was it.
Yeah.
And now I'm driving to Philly every day, doing that. And then how I get to Chambersburg, PA, is my grandfather. I got a call from my mom's side of the family. My grandfather, her father wasn't doing well, and I was unemployed at this point. and they said, we have an opportunity for you. Would you like to care for your grandfather? He's really sick. He was suffering like Alzheimer's, and we'll pay you $500 a week. And I was like, yeah. So I moved to Greencastle, PA, which is like 10 minutes from Chambersburg. And now I'm driving back and forth from Philly to Greencastle. And it was really sad. My grandfather suffered a stroke, and he had aphasia, which is like he can't say words. He thinks he knows what he's saying. So he knew the whole time what I was doing, but I just wrote him off like he was talking gibberish. And I feel so like I still to this day make living amends. Like me being sober is my living amends. And man, do I feel really, really shitty about that. And he died, and I moved in with another winner from Chambersburg, PA, and we stole TVs for a living, and that was my job. So this was like at the very, very end. And my mom at this point again was living up by me again.
What a rider. She's like, I want to find you. I'm just going to.
She was codependent. No, she was codependent.
Yeah.
She thought I was her sister reincarnated too. My whole life, her whole life.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Okay. So like, remember like her sister, committed suicide 2 years before. So
just to clarify, because I have a ton of questions, we could do like a 6-point whatever on like the questions that I have. But mom was sober for 28 years.
Mom was sober for 28, but really for 15, and then she was dry for the next 13.
So when she was sober for 15, right, and like doing the deal and like whatever that looked like for her, was she like taking care of her mental health, or like did it get progressively worse?
She was. She wasn't medicated until I was 18 years old, and she was still very much sober. She was like in her 15 years of sobriety there. Yeah. There was a point in my life where I remember my mom was like amazing. Her mental health was amazing. She was medicated for her bipolar, and she was going to meetings, and she was, sponsoring women, and she was just, Miss AA doing the whole thing.
Yeah.
But then she pulled away from meetings, and mom's mental health was just always rocky from then on.
Yeah.
She had a lot of trauma from her family and my father's divorce. She was very angry.
Yeah.
She was a very angry woman.
I've said it before on previous episodes. I'll continue to say it whenever like mental health comes up, right? But like I used to be that guy that would stand at the front of a meeting and be like, like I was diagnosed with this and this and this and this, and turns out I was just an untreated alcoholic, and I had to go through the 12 steps, and I had to get right with God, and whatever the case may be, until like year 6 or 7. And then I went through like serious mental health shit.
Really?
Turns out mental health's a very real thing.
Yes, it is.
So for anybody and like how dangerous of me to like talk like that in front of an entire meeting, right? And it's just like not educated on it, right? Like no lived experience on it.
Exactly.
Maybe I was misdiagnosed when I was a kid,
right?
But like it became very prevalent when I was an adult, and because of what we have learned in the rooms, right? I was like, well, I'm going through all this stuff because like I'm not sponsoring this number of guys, and I'm not praying this often a day, and I'm not continuing to make amends as much as I possibly can. And it's like I wasn't even well enough to even make that connection. You know what I mean?
Right.
Turns out, like chemically, I was just a little off. And I had to see somebody, and like we tried a bunch of different things, and it like saved my life.
Saved your life,
literally.
Yeah. Same here. In treatment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So not to cut you off, but anytime mental health comes up, it's like it's a real thing.
They talk about in our literature how there could be a whole chapter written on the dual, like the mental health, because it really is. It's a real thing. I mean, I'll stand as a testimony to that. Yeah. My mother and myself.
Yeah.
Saved my life too. Mom, she got a lot better when she was medicated. And then she relapsed with me. So she did kind of like follow me around everywhere. And when I was in Pennsylvania taking care of her father, and when I moved to Chambersburg, she ended up moving into, it was like a mother-daughter kind of apartment, and she lived in the apartment next to me. And at this point, she was using with me, and she was like my running buddy, and like she'd be the lookout while her and I would both be the lookout while my boyfriend would run into Walmart and steal the TV. And again, that feeling, I was like addicted to the whole rush of like sitting in the car and like waiting. Is he going to come out with a TV? Are we going to be able to pawn, and go get what we need to get? Panhandling. None of these things, all these things that I'm not proud of, like I talk about these things, and it just feels like a different person speaking.
What's crazy is that like I get it, right? Like I remember the stuff that I used to do, and I think about like, am I capable of doing that today? And it's like I literally would not do that today. But I also am very much realistic that it's like I'm not above it, because like
it's literally this far away.
Yeah. But I also like I don't know if I'm like sicker than the majority or we're just the same level of sickness or whatever. But like I also go in my head on like these weird, like, okay, I'll stay sober, right? But God forbid something drastic happened in my life where it's like I need to feed my kids. You know what I mean? Like again, like all bets are off. I'm doing whatever I got to do to take care of my family. You know what I mean? And I don't know if I had like that previous life, if like I would even have that thought, but it's like, it kind of gives me a little bit of comfort because it's like, I know everything's going to work out, Would I do that today? Absolutely not. But like, we used to do some wild stuff, which was normal at the time, like very much normal. Like, just another Tuesday. Yeah. Just in the parking lot, looking out for the boyfriend to make sure he got, the TV, and then be pissed if he came out with a 32. You were supposed to get the 55, dude. Like we would do wild stuff.
Yeah. Like watch out for Amy.
Mm-hmm.
She's a klepto. Can't believe it. And now I'm at the grocery store, and how you like scan stuff by yourself. I like make sure they can see me. I'm like, look, I'm scanning this one.
To like this day, I still have those same characteristics. I swear.
Completely. I'm like, make sure you see. I'm paying for every single thing.
I don't know how you guys are in Jersey right now, but like we don't have bags.
No, we don't either
around here. So like, I get all in my head. Like especially self-checkout.
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm scanning everything. I'm putting it in the bagged area.
That's what I'm saying.
Right? And
it makes me feel so.
And I'm like, I mean, I paid for this, but like, I don't know if they know if I did or not. But
I want them to know that I'm not stealing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because again, it's like that girl is in me. But okay, so this is like where it got really bad in Chambersburg, and when I said where I almost died, or I literally almost died. So Mom was living there, and she had come over to check on me or to see if I had anything. And she found me on the kitchen floor, bleeding from my mouth, because I for like a year and a half straight, I would wake up every morning with withdrawal symptoms, shaking and dry heaving. And from so much dry heaving, one of the varices in my esophagus, the little veins burst, and I was bleeding internally, and I didn't know, but I guess I had fallen down my steps. And she found me, called paramedics. I was put into a medically induced coma. And, I hear the story from Dad and Mom. I heard from Mom too. Before she passed, she actually just recently told me, the day, and how it was the most horrifying day of her life. And she was rolling around in the parking lot because they kept coming out saying, we don't know if your daughter's going to make it. Dad thought he was planning, making funeral arrangements. And then I come to like 13 days later, and they're handing me pamphlets. Well, I came to like, that day, obviously. And I came, I made it through, but I came to from the medically induced coma days later, and everyone's standing over me. And I had weird coma dreams too. Now that I think about it, I like can remember some weird flashbacks. It's crazy. But I was being handed these pamphlets from the doctors of like 12-step programs, and them saying, if you don't change your life around, you're not going to make it to your next birthday. You're not going to make it to 31. And you would think that with that information, you know, a normal person would really be like, okay, I'm not drinking anymore. I wasn't suicidal. I was just that sick. I am that sick. You know, put a drug or a drink in me, and let my spiritual bank go completely bankrupt. I am that sick.
Yeah.
And I left the hospital and drove to the liquor store instead of driving home to feed my animals first. Because that's what I knew how to do. I used to look at people walk their dogs outside and be like, they're high. I used to watch people go grab their mail and be like, that person took a shot before they woke up. You know, like I didn't understand how people got up and did normal, mundane tasks without a shot of liquor, a pill, or, you know, a little pick me up.
I remember
I never understood that.
Like early on, so like growing up in Philadelphia, like when you go to high school, some of the schools like you have to take SEPTA to go to school, right?
Oh,
Like,
that's cool.
We didn't have like yellow buses or anything like that. And our parents were fortunate that like everybody just took SEPTA to school. So I remember being on like the SEPTA bus and like looking at people in traffic, and I'm like, how do they do? Not even that. It's just like, how do they do it?
How do they do it?
How do they do it? Like, how do they? Because like I was already withdrawing at that point, and I was like, how are they doing this?
How do they just
like
be normal?
Why don't they have what I have? Or if they do, they must have like gotten well first, right? Like, because I didn't know what I actually was suffering from at that point yet. But I was like, what? How am I going to do this thing life? Like, how am I going to do this whole thing successfully, right?
That's
but yeah,
exactly the feeling. That's
much to your experience too. It's like I just thought everybody did this, or somehow one day I was going to grow out of it, or something. But like I was so distorted.
So distorted. That's the word. I just didn't understand where people got their motivation to just do normal things in life. I just didn't understand. But at the same time, remembering as a young kid being, I mean, yes, I told you my childhood, but I was also this happy, joyous, and free spirit of a child that loved every second of it. And I used to be like, how do I get that back? You know, like I didn't get it.
So without going too deep, right? It's like the closer I get to God, right? The closer I can, like, the more and more I can like peel back the onion, right? The more childlike I can get, and the more present I can be.
Amen.
But that's, you know,
that's what happened to me.
Yeah, absolutely. But we don't know that on the front end unless we go through like some serious pain and like some serious work on ourselves.
Yep.
I can't stress that enough. If there is anybody that like listens to this deal or whatever, right? Like I'm sure you didn't just get better by osmosis.
No, I did not just sit in a chair and was struck sober.
Yeah. Although it would be great.
It'd be cool.
But like there was like some serious actions that needed to be taken and still taken on a daily basis.
Yeah.
But I didn't just grow out of this thing, right?
Nope.
And I know that I didn't grow out of it because of like how I operate sober.
Yep.
Like I still got this thing for sure.
Yep.
All right. So eventually you got sober, right?
Yeah.
Did you feed the animals before you got sober, or you just forgot about them?
They actually got taken away from me. So yeah, I
I'm always that guy. I tried to make a joke that they took the animals.
They took the animals.
Did we replace the animals? Do you have different animals now?
I do have different animals.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
They took the animal. Well, good for the animals. They didn't need me. I couldn't take care of myself. I couldn't take care of them. But no. So this is at the very end, man. I went home and I had a warrant out for my arrest. From Baltimore County, Maryland, and the cops came actually that night and picked me up and brought me to Franklin County Jail in Chambersburg, PA, where I sat. And remember, they told me, you know, you got to stop drinking. And I forgot to mention when they were handing me those pamphlets, they said you have cirrhosis of the liver. You know, if you don't stop, you're going to die. So when I was sitting in the jail waiting to be extradited to Baltimore, which they never tell you when you're going to be extradited or picked up. You're just waiting there like a sitting duck. And so I'm sitting in a jail cell. And of course, they ask you, do you have any suicide in your in your family? And I said yes, I was honest, but then they put me on suicide watch. So now I'm in solitary, like by myself. And I'm sitting there and I keep seeing the correction officer walk back and forth and I'm not feeling good. You know, the girl from Willy Wonka, the blueberry?
Yeah.
That was me, but yellow. I was a yellow
You were
berry.
jaundice. Yeah.
I was jaundice, bad. And I blew up. I was like, 200-pound yellow berry.
It's a lot of water retention. Yep.
And they kept like looking at me and they were like pointing like, this girl doesn't. And I was like knocking. And they finally came and they were like, she's got to go to medic right away. And I did. And then they were like, she's got to go to the emergency right away. So I spent a week in the emergency room, handcuffed feet and wrists to a bed with correction officers taking turns, taking shifts, watching over me, and talk about being vulnerable and humility, man. I got out and then I went, did some time in Baltimore, and I never saw that boyfriend again. Don't know what happened to him. But I got out and Dad once again said, you're coming back to my house. And that's where I went and I was mandated to do the Pocono stay at the 28-day rehab. And then I got out, and then I didn't want people to think I was crazy for still drinking. So I just was drinking Listerine. And then I ended up in Bergen Regional.
Right.
And then after I did the 28-day program at Bergen Regional, they said there is a all-women's program here on site, on campus, called Spring House for women. And man, at this point, I just kept saying yes. I know this was God, because this whole time I was figuring it out, right? And I was going to figure it out until the end. And I went over to Spring House, and it was a very, very tough program. It was like a TC, therapeutic community. I mean, no phones. I work in a rehab now, and I see like everybody gets their phones like at certain points of the day. No phones. We got to use like their house line at certain times of the day. I wasn't allowed to talk to my mom because she was conflict of interest, too codependent. I was allowed to talk to my father, and no men, no past men. Yeah. And we had to, wake up at a certain time, do chores 3 times a day, go to meetings every single day, find a sponsor, get your own rides to meetings. You were able to get a job while you're there. I grew up there.
What a novel idea. It worked.
Wow, man. I can't praise that place enough. I found myself there. I really did. I fell in love with myself there. They're so smart to put women together. That for me, that's what I needed. Because like I said, like relationships were really like me just always wanting to be out of myself. I got to really love myself. And I found that. I found that with my relationship with God there. I found God.
I love that.
In Spring House. That house is like full of God's magic. It's truly, truly incredible.
So how long did you stay there?
So they told me, I was like, how long is this program? I was still trying to, control things. And they just laughed at me and they're like, oh, it's like 6 weeks. It's not 6 weeks. It was case by case. And I ended up staying there for 11 months.
Okay.
But towards the end, it was like by choice.
Yeah.
Around my
That's my story too. Yeah.
Yeah. I got to the point where I was like, I'm kind of afraid to go back out into the real world. I was that alcoholic addict that needed to be removed from society and like some tough love. They gave me nothing but love in that place, but it was tough love. Like there was a swear jar. If we cursed too much, every time you said a curse word, you had to write it down and put it in the jar.
So maybe that's your old trauma. I don't know the right word. When you were about to say the word fuck.
And I was like,
F.
It could be.
And I was like, okay.
They kind of turned me into a lady. No. No, yeah. Well, because
Mm-hmm.
the way that they spoke about the jar was, words have a lot of power,
Mm-hmm.
and what you're putting out there means a lot. And speaking about like perception and switching the narratives, and I realized in there that's when all things started to change. Like I don't have to go to these groups. I get to go to these groups.
Yeah.
Like my good friends were out there dying.
Mm-hmm.
And I get to be in this warm home with loving individuals who have their best interest for me. And it all just started to click. And I just allowed it to.
And also learning how to live, right? Like simple
life
tasks.
skills,
Mm-hmm.
paying a bill.
Mm-hmm.
Like I opened my first bank account really there kind of.
Yeah.
That I was responsible for,
Mm-hmm. They actually paid on time.
And that I paid on time
Mm-hmm.
and I saved money and I took the bus to work and I started to feel good about myself.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how it all started to unfold. And that's how I continue to stay sober. It's literally doing the next right thing. And all these little simple tasks, and they talk about it. They all add up. And when they told me, nothing changes if nothing changes, that hit me really hard. I really was willing to let go of all my past. Not talking to my mom for that amount of time was really hard in the beginning, but it was the best thing that's ever happened to me.
Yeah.
And today I just live so free.
Love that. So we only have, because for some reason I saw that like before we started, like there's like a weird time limit on just like the card, but that's my shit. We should be able to go forever, but I'm lazy. But I don't want to like not talk about all the really cool stuff you have in your life currently.
Let's get there.
Right? So you live a very full life.
Yeah.
You're gainfully employed, married.
Yeah.
Right? Most recently opened up your own business.
Yes.
Right? What are you doing? Concrete?
Yeah, I'm a mason. Could you imagine?
No, so your yoga studio, right?
Yes.
But it's much more than that.
Yes.
Right? So touch on that. Like what is...
So really quick, in that Pocono rehab back in 2015, a woman came in to do yoga with us. And it was my first time doing yoga. And it was the first time my mind got quiet. Because I'm sure you can relate to this, but like I was all like that TV screen, like shh, And when I got on the mat, it was the first time that I like felt comfortable in my body. And I just started to practice yoga. And what I do now is I work at Garden State Treatment Center.
Mm-hmm.
And I am their yogi. I bring yoga to the treatment center twice a month. And it's been my dream these past 8 years to incorporate yoga and recovery, and kind of just like how we pass on, what we're doing now. Like, this is how we stay sober, right? I wanted to pass the yogic philosophy and the 12 steps to people, and kind of marry the two, because I enjoy it so much. I found inner peace that way. And so I opened a studio 2 months ago.
And what's it called?
Life Spark Studio.
Life Spark. Okay.
Yep.
So are you doing just yoga there? Are you guys offering like Reiki or?
So I do offer Reiki.
Okay.
I have it's hot vinyasa.
I'm out.
Everyone says that.
No, I'm sure it's a great time. But like, yeah, I would die. I sweat.
No, yeah, but that's so good. It's detox.
I sweat in the cold.
Yeah, well, it's good. It's good.
Until you see me in the corner and I'm just dead.
Everybody says that. It's really not that bad. Ask my husband. He loves it.
Oh, man. All right. So it's hot vinyasa.
Hot vinyasa, restorative, yin, which is like the slower workshops. I have plans to hold a 12-step meeting there.
Love that.
So I called the GSO in New York for AA, and I asked how to set one up, and they said, just start having a meeting there. So I plan to have a women's meeting there, because we don't have many in our area. And that's what I'm doing. My husband and I met in recovery.
Love that. Okay.
Yeah. And we've been married for a year. None of this would be possible. I mean, I know you get it. But for those of you out there none of this would be possible if I wasn't sober.
Yeah.
You know?
Not for someone like us.
No,
right?
not for someone like me.
Because truth of the matter is like we didn't just grow out of it.
Right.
As much as like the outside world might think we did. Like there was like some serious stuff that we had to do. I was told when I went to the recovery house, I could leave the recovery house when I'm okay with living in the recovery house. You know what I mean? And I stayed for like 15 months. And like, I didn't want to go to the recovery house, right? Like I didn't want to go at all.
Right.
And then I fell in love with the recovery house and like the brotherhood and like all the guys that, you know,
Yep.
but also like really solid recovery, right? Like if we weren't doing what we were supposed to do within a 12-step fellowship, you were probably asked to leave that house, you know?
I love that.
So thank God for, you know, the people that played a part in getting me there. But
Yeah.
anything else you want to like say before we shut it down?
No. I love that what you just touched upon about how you said that they told you could leave.
Mhm.
And I remember them saying like the doors are unlocked. You can leave at any time. And I just wanted to touch upon how like, of course, like my initial thought was like, all right, it's good to know. Maybe I will. But when I realized I wanted to stay too, I held on to that little like hope. And it's like what got me through. And little stuff like that, like little God winks is just what keeps me going.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes it's like really like huge moments, but like
Huge or subtle.
hindsight's 2020. You know, so when you look back on like your, you know, early days in sobriety or recovery or whatever we're calling it. And even if I'm doing what I need to be doing, right? Like I can see it. If I'm not, I don't see any type of God moments. Like God's either everywhere or he's nothing.
My mom always used to say that.
Yeah. So and that's my truth. There's days where, and I've been sober for a good bit now, right? Like there's days where God is nothing.
Yep.
And then there's days where like I'm floating through my day.
Yep.
Today, full transparency, God was nothing, right? Because like I was just running on self-will. I was angry all day. I probably wasn't like the most positive person at work. But that's just my truth, right? I'm just like, I do believe in being transparent. So yeah.
I would have never have guessed. Oh, but I did want to say really quick, I forgot to tell you the what was really cool about the importance of the peacock. Remember I told you about the peacock?
Oh yeah.
So that's my mascot for my studio.
Oh no shit. Okay, so it's
the peacock.
Is it in the logo?
Yes, that's the logo.
I love that. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
And we got that, I think, still on.
Okay.
Yeah,
cool.
I think we got it.
Yeah.
I don't know. What's that say? Can you say my eyes are shot?
No.
It doesn't matter. I
but
forgot to do.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah,
this
thanks
was
for making
great.
the trip.
Yeah.
I do have to do my YouTube thing. At Pain W Purpose on Instagram, Pain with a Purpose podcast on all streaming platforms. With that, I don't want us to get cut off. I wish we had a whole nother half hour because I feel like we could literally just keep going.
For sure.
And I know that you drove forever to get here.
Yeah, I got to go get my dog. He's probably.
Yeah, well, we don't want to lose another, you know.
I don't want my other animal taken away.
But yeah, so with that, thank you again. I really do appreciate it. Shout out Jackie for connecting us. Yeah, we'll see you guys next week.